Hi, and welcome to a new section, Time Series Analysis. In this section, we will understand the difference between Python and Pandas date tools, slice time series intelligently, and use methods that only work with a date-time index. We will also see how to count the number of weekly crimes and measure crime by weekday and year. Let's get started with the first video, understanding the difference between Python and Pandas date tools. In this video, we will first explore Python's datetime module and then turn to the corresponding and superior date tools in Pandas. Broadly speaking, time series are simple points of data gathered over time. Most typically, the time is evenly spaced between each data point. Pandas has excellent functionality with regards to manipulating dates, aggregating over different time periods, sampling different periods of time, and much more. Before we get to Pandas, it can help to be aware of and understand core Python's date and time functionality. The datetime module provides three distinct data types: date, time, and datetime. Formally, a date is a moment in time consisting of just the year, month, and day. For instance, June 7, 2013 would be a date. A time consists of hours, minutes, seconds, and microseconds, and is unattached to any date. An example of time would be 12 hours and 30 minutes. A date time consists of both the elements of a date and time together. The datetime module is actually fairly simple, with a total of only 6 types of objects: date, time, datetime, time delta, along with 2 others on time zones. The Pandas timestamp and time delta objects have all the functionality of their datetime module counterparts and more. It will be possible to remain completely in Pandas when working with time series. On the other hand, Pandas has a single object to encapsulate date and time called a timestamp. It has nanosecond, that is 1/1000th of a second, precision and is derived from NumPy's datetime64 data type. Both Python and Pandas each have a time delta object that is useful when doing date addition or subtraction. Now let's begin by importing the datetime module into our namespace and creating a date, time, and datetime object. As you can see in this code, only integers may be used as each component of the date or time and are passed as separate arguments. Now let's go ahead to construct and print out a time delta object, the other major data type from the datetime module. Now add this time delta to the date and datetime objects from the previous step. Now what if you attempt to add a time delta to a time object? Let's check it. You can see that it isn't possible and it returns a type error. Let's turn to Pandas and its timestamp object, which is a moment in time with nanosecond precision. The timestamp constructor is very flexible and handles a wide variety of inputs. Here's how you can use the timestamp object in your code. You can even use it with for the date in some other format. For example, this one. Similarly, here's the third format. Can we try another format? Let's do it with the fourth one. And here's another way to use the timestamp object. Now it's also possible to pass in a single integer or float to the timestamp constructor, which returns a date equivalent to the number of nanoseconds after the Unix epoch, which is January 1st, 1970. You can see that we've got the same date, January 1st, 1970. In addition to integer components and strings, a single numeric scalar can be used as a date. The units of this scalar are defaulted to nanoseconds, but are changed to days in the second statement, with the other options being hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, and microseconds. Pandas provides the toDateTime function that works fairly similarly to the timestamp constructor, but comes with a few different parameters for special situations. We'll demonstrate here a few examples so that you get a better idea about it. In the first case, we simply pass a date to the toDateTime function. Also, you can pass the day first parameter and set it to true. Another important parameter available only to datetime is format, which is particularly useful whenever a string contains a particular date pattern that is not automatically recognized by Pandas. Here we have a date time enmeshed inside some other characters. We substitute the date and time pieces of the string with their respective formatting directives. A date formatting directive appears as a single percentage sign, followed by a single character. Each directive specifies some part of a date or time. Let's run this code. You can also use the origin parameter with the timestamp function. The toDateTime function comes equipped with even more functionality. It is capable of converting entire lists or series of strings or integers to timestamps. Since we are far more likely to interact with series or data frames and not single scalar values, you are far more likely to use the datetime than timestamp. So let's try to convert a series to datetime. It returns the date for the series passed to the toDateTime function. Try it with another date format. Here we have used the errors parameter, which is defaulted to the string value raise, but can also be set to ignore or coerce. Whenever a string date is unable to be converted, the errors parameter determines what action to take. When set to raise, an exception is raised and program execution stops. When set to ignore, the original sequence gets returned as it was prior to entering the function. When set to coerce, the nat that is not a time object is used to represent the new value. Now let's execute this code. You can see that it converts all values to a timestamp correctly, except for the last one, which is forced to become nat. Here's another way to pass values to the datetime function. It returns the datetime index object with these values. Analogously to the timestamp constructor and to the datetime function, Pandas has time delta and toTime delta to represent an amount of time. Both the time delta constructor and the toTime delta function can create a single time delta object. Like toTime delta has quite a bit more functionality and can convert entire lists or series into time delta objects. Here we'll demonstrate a few examples on both. In the first one, we use the time delta constructor by passing the date and time in the first format. Here's another way to do this. Also, you can use the unit parameter along with it. Now we will use the toTime delta function. If you want to pass series to the toTime delta, you can do it with this code. We can even pass time strings to the toTime delta function. This time, it returns the time delta index object. Time deltas may be added or subtracted from timestamps and from each other. They may even be divided from each other to return a float. For instance, we can multiply an integer, say 2, to the time delta constructor. As expected, 12 days are converted to 24 days and so on. Or you can even add two time deltas and multiply both with an integer at the same time, as I did it here. Let's run this code. Similarly, you can even add two time delta objects. For example, we create two objects, td1 and td2, and simply add both. Let's see an example of division. Quite easy, isn't it? Both timestamps and time deltas have a large number of features available as attributes and methods. Let's sample a few of them. We create a timestamp and store it in a variable. Next, we use the ceil function. And now get year, month, day, hour, minute, and seconds from the ts variable. So it gives the corresponding values as per the sequence we specified. You can even obtain the day of week, day of year, and days in month. Let's convert this date to pyDateTime using the pyDateTime function. Now we pass a float value using the unit parameter. This huge value can be rounded off using the round method. Notice that the time is rounded off to 5 hours and 52 minutes. Whereas to get each component of this time instance, you can use the components object. Or if you want to find the total seconds, use the total_seconds method by calling it through the TD object. Cool! Now you can efficiently use most of the date tools available in Pandas. In the next video, we will show you how to slice time series intelligently.